My name's Adam. I am 24, and I'm a graphic designer for work. I run a design business, and I've been at BRBC for I think about a year and a half now. It might even be 2 years. So I grew up in Stokeash Church, which is about 10 minutes away from my house, which is where I've always lived in Gisingham. Yeah, so I was always sort of brought up in a Christian home, but kind of did the usual thing of going to church, never making a commitment, but just having that as part of like a kind of routine, if you want. And so I was in the worship team, and I was involved in a few other things with young people. But yeah, it wasn't until about the age of 16, 17 that I went to a Delirious concert. It might have been earlier than that, actually. I'm always bad with timings. And so they were the band that I was listening to, and it was at that point that I was just like, actually, I need Jesus. And so I sort of gave my life to him that night. But from there, it was kind of a bit of a night experience that reshaped me for a few days. But perhaps when I went back to school and when I went to college, it never really kind of meant anything to me, and I was always quite concerned about people knowing that I went to church or that I was Christian. So I wouldn't say that until I was in sort of college and late high school years that I truly gave my life to Jesus and saw my need for him in a more kind of intense way. Yeah, from that point it was then kind of the wake-up call that I needed, that actually I need Jesus just as much as anyone. Just the fact that I go to church doesn't make any difference. I think shortly after sort of leaving college, I then got a job, and I've always been kind of the sort of person who used to fixate on things and want to know what was going on, and like Mum would say the same, and it was always a thing where I would like to know what was happening. And so I wouldn't ever say that I had struggled with anxiety my whole life, but I've always been kind of the sort of person that likes to know what's happening and kind of feel like I'm in control in some way. Basically, I had gradually, as I've been at work, I'd just gradually felt more and more like, I felt more kind of under pressure because I hadn't really had a full-time job before. But then it was also the case of day to day, about a year into my job, one time that I just woke up and I just felt like tense and really unwell, really just hot and really ill, and I thought I've just got a virus or something, and yeah, it gradually become like part of my day-to-day life, and I hadn't ever thought, oh, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's something to do with my mental health. I thought I was just ill. And then it was just one day, sort of as I went for a meeting with a client, I came out of the meeting expecting to feel like okay after that, and just sat in my car, and I still sort of remember it to this day. Like, I just sat in my car and just like, I don't know what's happening to me. I don't know what's going on. Like, it was been probably 3 or 4 months after that point of feeling like it, and I just don't know why I feel like this. And then the more I'd spoken to other people at work, they sort of said, do you think it might be something to do with mental health? Are you feeling stressed out? Are you feeling anxious? And that was the first time I sort of thought, oh, maybe it could be something to do with that. The times that I remember it the most are the times when I had missed out on things that most people would class as like fun things, and I was petrified of these fun things as if I was gonna, have life or death kind of surgery. I left it and I had missed like a couple of my mates' stag do's, my mate's wedding, lost thousands of pounds on holidays that I never went on. I had an eye problem, so because of the anxiety, I had some sort of weird fluid problem with my eye, so I sort of couldn't see out of it properly for a little bit. So it was all kind of things, and I should have probably spotted things by that point. It all kind of built up, and the more that I tried to run from it, the more I needed practical support and also spiritual support, because I was going to God and pleading with him to help me. And in those moments, I felt like nothing could keep me out of the situation I was in. Nothing could rescue me from the place where I was in. No one could support me in the way that I needed. No one could explain anything to me. It was a real wake-up call as to like, your faith is going to be like real now. You're going to be tested in this kind of time if you hadn't been already, because I'd sort of lived in like a Christian bubble of where people were, we were all quite happy. And it was just at this point where I had no idea what was going on. And so from there I'd then seen Christian counsellors and just spoke about it for the first time. And so that was quite a big step, because I kind of felt like a bit of a bad Christian, because I read in the Bible, don't be anxious, don't worry, and I couldn't not worry. I couldn't ever get out of the place that I was in, and the more that it built up, the more I felt like I was not doing what I should as a Christian, or if maybe I've done something wrong, maybe God's trying to punish me for something, maybe the way I'm living is causing me to have anxiety. And so it was just a time of a lot of questions and kind of a weird situation to be in, and a horrible one. So I think my journey from anxiety was a long one that I wished was a lot shorter. And I think there were a lot of questions to be asked of myself, and also of my faith, like whether I wanted to rest on the words of Jesus and the Bible, or whether I wanted to look to different places. And so for me, my response to that was kind of understanding that I need to let go of control, because I never actually had it in the first place. But also realising that letting go of that control was a good thing, and that God knew what was best for me. I didn't. And although in those times I tried to control as much as I could, because when you feel those physical, that mental struggle comes out in a physical sense, you kind of will do anything to get out of it. But it was also that understanding that actually, in order to get better, I needed to take steps that made me feel really uncomfortable. But it wasn't because they were like scary situations, but it was because of the anxiety and the times of feeling anxious. It had kind of tricked my brain, so I almost had to relearn how to do like normal things, because I had just anxiety had become so much a part of my life, and so much about how I thought about things, that I couldn't rationalise any situation. And so part of it involved me, as I say, realising that God wasn't angry with me in those times, realising that I had a hope in Him that far outweighed any concern of this earth that I could ever have. And although I physically felt scared and afraid, that He was with me in those times, and that I could be strengthened by Him, and that it wasn't a case of I'm alone in those times, but actually He is working for my good in those times, whether I felt like it was good or not. It's very difficult, because I can completely empathise with people in a situation where you don't see that, and it's actually, again, to be quite blunt, like it for me kind of was a little bit kind of annoying when you got like a just pray about it kind of answer. Because in those times it does feel like everything's caving in. And but I would just say that ultimately, although you may feel hopeless now, there is hope because of Jesus, because nothing can separate us from that. Although you may feel like you need to be in control, or that there isn't a direction to turn, that actually He is there, He is with you, He can be your source of strength. And just taking small steps each day in a practical sense makes a huge difference. Having people around you makes a huge difference, to remind you of that hope when you can't remind yourself of it yourself. Because I know in those times, it's not like you wake up in those times and feel like you want to study, or to open a sermon, or to or to pray, and you don't know what to pray in those times, so you just feel kind of numb. So just taking those small steps to have people around you who will encourage you to do that, who will be able to support you and pray for you, and to ultimately know that Jesus is able to sympathise with us and empathise with the situation we're in, and he's not keeping us at arm's length when we feel in those low moments, but he's very close, although you may not feel like he is at the moment. Yeah.